You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K25. It is myself, Mo Mooncey, the dynamic duo, back once again, Mr. BJ Armstrong and Mr. Scott Perry. You guys have a good Christmas?
It's always a good Christmas when you get a chance to spend with your family,
Your
time with
team
my
lost,
girls.
Scott.
But
My
my
team
team, but
lost. So
yeah, yeah,
BJ's the only one
but
who had a good
teams,
Christmas.
yeah, but in terms
What?
of, but in terms of that, that's what I was pivoting to. My Steelers took a tough loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, and but I will say this because I was watching sports a lot that day. The NBA had some very entertaining games. I know when on our last show we talked before that we were worried about the product and how it was looking, but I must say that in terms from a competitive standpoint, all of those games were pretty competitive, highly competitive. So good viewing for those who like competitive basketball on Christmas Day.
Oh yeah, they were amazing games on Christmas. The Knicks and the Spurs started off with a thrilling matchup. And then you had what the Timberwolves who looked like they'd done their thing against the Mavs. Luka went out injured, and the Mavs somehow came back and almost came back to win. The Sixers didn't. The Sixers had a great game, and then the Warriors and the Lakers. Steph and LeBron always can be a
Who did the
banger.
Sixers play? I can't remember. Can you remind me?
I
Who did
can't.
they
I
play?
don't remember. It was Christmas. The families were out. Let's get some food. I don't really remember that game.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't really remember that game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it was good. It was
That
good. Then he had
that
Denver and
that
Phoenix on the late one, but go
that
ahead,
probably
Scott.
was that probably was the biggest upset of the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Philly,
that was the only
that
real
Philly
upset
game.
of the game.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it was.
Hey, San Antonio tried. Two
Yep.
two things can be true at once. We talked about that game going into it. Showcase for Wemby. Hey, Wemby gave the people what they wanted in New York. He showed up in a major way, did everything but get the win. And they definitely had a chance to win that game. But the Knicks just had a little too much, and Mikal Bridges had his best game as a New York Knicks. So it was a great way to kick it off, kick the action off of that day. But Wemby, though, that was his first of probably many MSG moments where he will have a impactful game for
And
sure.
then he went to what was it Washington Park and played chess in the rain with the New Yorkers who play chess. I thought that was pretty cool.
No question. Wemby, he's learning. He's learning both on and off the court. That's for sure. How to navigate his way through this NBA. Good move by him.
Yeah, yeah, great, great. And Wemby doing great things isn't the only thing that's been happening in the state of New York because the Brooklyn Nets have been active in the trade market. And they have reacquired the player who was once an all-star for them in D'Angelo Russell and sent over Dorian Finney-Smith over to the Lakers. And the Lakers also thrown in some picks, and there's a few other details. But I wanted to start today talking about that trade and your guys' perspective on it, both from Brooklyn and the Lakers perspective.
First off, from the Lakers' perspective, this was a move, in my opinion, that they had to make. We've been talking about this Lakers team since since last year, really, in terms of them needing better defenders on this roster. They go out and get a very good one in Dorian Finney-Smith. He also brings a lot of toughness with him that I like. He was a player when he was in Dallas was very important to that Dallas team. They did not want to get rid of him in Dallas because he was just that important to them in terms of his ability to defend and be that kind of glue guy on the wing. And he's improved each year, his ability to shoot from beyond the arc. Offensively, he was having a good year here this year in Brooklyn. So I think he can help this Lakers team. He's much needed on their roster. He's going to take some of the pressure off of LeBron and Austin Reeves and some of those guys in terms of defensively on the perimeter. So good move for them. This will add to the expectations for that team now that they try to move up the conference ladder in the Western Conference and try to compete to get back to a final. From the Brooklyn Nets standpoint, it's obvious what they're doing. They are building for the future.
Tanking.
Let it. You
Come
said
on.
it, Mo.
I'll say it because I know you guys ain't gonna say it.
Yeah, Mo, you said it. I didn't. But they are obviously preparing for the future. They're accumulating a vast number of picks. I believe they got 3 second-round picks in this deal to go along with a great number of second-round picks they already have in their war chest, if you will. And I know they have a number of firsts as well. So this is what you see a lot of organizations do when they're trying to build for the future, and that is amass as much draft capital as you can so that you can go into the drafts each year with the chance to bring in good young talent, or B, utilize a number of those picks to go out and trade for some more talent once you feel that you're really ready to win. So I understand the trade from both sides of it. Will just be interesting to see now what Brooklyn does. They really have one remaining player who has a lot of value around the league that I'm sure they will be trying to move prior to the deadline, and that's Cam Johnson. And he will probably be a player that ends up netting them a first in some type of deal that they get for him.
Dorian Finney-Smith. I think he's the perfect kind of player to play with LeBron James. Because when you look at the success that the LeBron teams have, the role players on those teams, whether it was in Miami with the likes of Shane Battier, Ray Allen, for example, or whether it was in Cleveland when he had, guys like J.R. Smith maybe playing a different role to what they played previously in their career. But essentially, when you're at a LeBron team, when it comes down to the playoffs, LeBron runs the point guard spot on that team. Because whether or not he's a point guard by position, he's got the ball in his hands, and they essentially will space the floor with shooters, and he's going to drive dish to them. I like Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a huge upgrade defensively over what D'Angelo Russell was giving him. And they also got Shake Milton in their trade. So if they need a ball handler to come in off the bench and play that backup guard spot, they've got Shake Milton coming in for that, who's, he's not been having an awful career in the NBA. The best thing about Dorian Finney-Smith is his three-point shooting numbers are always improving in the playoffs. Every year he seems to take a leap with that. And like I said, making you stronger defensively, I think is a good trade for the Lakers. Those 3 second-round picks, you've got to make a move while you've still got a 40-year-old LeBron and Anthony Davis is still managed somehow to stay healthy. I think it was a necessary move for them. Do you think, BJ, that this was the right move for Brooklyn, or could they have got a better return from elsewhere around the league?
As I like to tell you, Mo, and our audience, I like to stay on the court and what's going on the court. And here's another move where now we're talking about everything except what this means on the court. So
I just spoke about what it means on the court.
For the Lakers, you're talking about what it means for Brooklyn on the court.
Brooklyn ain't trying to do nothing on the court.
The court, exactly.
Brooklyn ain't trying to do nothing on the court.
And then
they're paying Ben Simmons $30 million. They ain't trying to do nothing.
I just want to stay consistent, and I want to just stay principled in how I just happen to observe the game and how I learned how to play this game. If we're talking about winning, we must start on the other end of the floor. Okay. And we keep saying we need role players to play with LeBron. Okay, I get it. If we're talking about that LeBron that was in Miami or Cleveland, I understand that. But then we casually say, well, he's 40 years old, the 40-year-old LeBron. Okay, well, which LeBron is it? Is it this version of LeBron, or is it the other version of LeBron? I've said it years ago, and I'll continue to say it. Just give me what you have, and let's play it out. But we must adjust, and we must adapt to what's available to us as we play and as we watch the game. Now, I'm not sure that version that you're referring to, Mo. You just said it. Mo said, hey, we need role players to play with him. Which version are we? Because that version that we're referring to is not the one that I'm currently seeing. I admire what he's doing on a nightly basis when he plays because of his age, how his game has matured over the years. But this is a different version now. And because this is a different version, I think it's unfair for us to keep saying that, but that's just my perspective because, if we're expecting this Laker team to win.
Mhm.
We are expecting
Right.
this. Well, okay. Well, at least that's what they're telling me. And living out here in Los
Yeah,
Angeles,
yeah,
this
yeah.
Laker team is going to win. So I keep saying, okay, so now it's D'Angelo Russell's fault, and then it's this guy's fault, and then wait a minute, hold on. All I'm saying is I like I like the player that they received, right? Dorian
Finney-Smith.
Finney-Smith.
Yes.
I like
I think
Dorian Finney-Smith.
yes.
I like that. I said this 30 years ago. You must have a player or two that can play downhill to attack the defense. Now they call it touch paints, whatever they call it. I just call it, hey, you must have a player that can take advantage of and create the chaos. Because this league is so good, these players are so good that you must have a player that can break down the defense and play in transition and create chaos on the defensive end where the defense has to help or what have you. You must have a player that has the ability to always engage a second defender. You would prefer to be a good team where you had a player or two that required a double team so that you can have the consistency to get more open shots than you have contested shots. I don't know if the Lakers have that with this roster. All right. Is there a player that you would say that plays downhill consistently with this group? I don't know if there's a player that consistently demands a double team where every team in the league says, hey, we have to double. I don't know. I do like the fact that Dorian Smith is a good player. I think he is a terrific role player, at least the one that, we're referring to. We saw him in Dallas. I don't know so much so how that worked out for him in Brooklyn, but I think there are a lot of unanswered questions in the construction of this roster when we're talking about the LA Lakers with the way the team is constructed. Yeah. And when I say constructed is because on one hand, we're expecting this team to win a championship. That's what they always, when I go to the games in LA, they always announce whatever, how many championships they won, Mo? How many championships?
Oh, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes.
I think they have 12 and an in-season cup and a Disneyland trophy.
Yeah. Well, the Lakers are about championships. So I'm going to continue to view them through a championship lens. And right now, I'm not sure if this is a championship caliber team. And that's why I'm looking at them for better or for worse. Now, if you telling me, otherwise, okay, I'll listen. I like the players that are on the roster. They had a great start to the season, but this is the Lakers. Lakers tell me, it's about championships. It's like Boston. It's about championships. It's not about getting to the playoffs with these organizations. So I'm looking at them through that lens. And are you telling me this is the move that pushes you? What are we discussing here? As far as what this move really means to this roster. Is it part of a bigger plan? Is it part of a bigger move? Okay, I'll wait. I'm patient with it, but I'm not buying into the narrative because the narrative says this is the Lakers.
Do you think this trade makes them better or worse, or they stay the same?
I'm not sure. What this does. I'm not sure. And the reason being is where does he contribute on a consistent basis with the roster as it's currently constructed? Like where is he gonna play? Like, this kid, Dalton Connect, you gotta find some minutes for him. You gotta find some minutes for him. You gotta find some minutes, for what's the kid?
Reeves.
Austin Reeves.
Right? He's been playing really well recently.
Right? You got to find some minutes, right? You got to find minutes for these people. So I don't know. I really don't know.
And they've been playing the kid Max Christie a lot too. They like him. They seem to like him.
Christie's been playing. Rui Hachimura's been playing. Like, where are you going to find these 25 to 30 minutes a night so that he can settle in, contribute to this roster, and figure out how to play as the roster currently is constructed? Okay. I don't know.
Well, you now have 25, 26 minutes a game that D'Angelo Russell was playing, that those minutes
But
will
he's
be.
playing at the lead guard position.
Yes.
Yeah, and then, because Dorian Finney-Smith obviously is not that. He is a wing player.
He's
Yes.
he's like a 3 or a 4.
He's 4, yes.
So
but
unless
again, that's what.
And then don't forget Cam Reddish is over there too. That's been playing. He
started some games for them.
So what's I'm saying? I don't get it. Like, but again, maybe they know something that I don't know. So
this is what JJ Redick signed up for when he wanted to coach.
Well, he was teammates with Dorian Finney-Smith in Dallas briefly, and on his podcast he would talk about him. He would always say great things whenever he spoke about him. So he's clearly a player that he's had targeted, that he wants.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure he weighed in on this deal for sure and wanted this player. So he has to have a pathway that, at least in his mind, that he sees him playing. And I'll just add this: do I think this trade makes him a championship favorite or contender? No, not at all. Do I think it has the potential to help them secure 5th or 6th seed in the Western Conference? Possibly, maybe. And that's what So, but to BJ's point, when everybody always wants to talk about the Lakers, and when you talk about the Lakers, it's always pretty much championship or bust. You at least got to get to the finals, and let's face it. As great as LeBron James has been over his career, you can see now that he picks and chooses his battles. He has to. He's 40 years old. Yeah. He can't sustain 35 minutes a night, triple doubles on back-to-backs and all that throughout an 82-game season. We know those days are past him and beyond him. Dorian Finney-Smith won't take that pressure off of him in terms of that offensive load, in my opinion. He's more of a guy that off of whoever's penetration, he's going to be able to contribute offensively some. But defensively, that's to me why they made this move, to think that he's going to improve their defensive efforts in hoping that they can win some games in another way sometimes when the shots aren't falling and you can kind of grind your way out defensively. So I think that's what the thinking was here for them.
Yeah, because we've spoken about the Lakers before and their defense, especially on the perimeter, because obviously Anthony Davis is a great defender, but this is an upgrade somewhat for their defense. But JJ Redick's going to have to figure it out. But it's tough. It's tough being a coach in the NBA, as Mike Brown this week found out, and the Sacramento Kings fired him on his way to the airport. I believe he was on the way to get onto the plane, and they called him and they fired him. I mean, it came right after the game. I don't know if you guys saw the game where I think they were playing the Nets, and the defensive coverage to end the game. Or was it? Was it the game against the Pistons?
No, it was against the Pistons. It was the Pistons.
And then they fouled Jaden Ivey shooting a 3, and
our Detroit Pistons.
Your Detroit Pistons.
And they had led the Kings had led the entire game for the most part, and they were up fairly big. And I think they were up 10 points with 3 minutes to go.
What are your guys' thoughts? Was it the right time for the Kings to move on to find a new head coach, or was he simply the scapegoat for questionable roster building decisions? Because the Kings were the feel-good story of the NBA just a couple of years ago. Yes. They ended their 17-year playoff drought. They lit the beam. They went and got Sabonis and Fox, and they're great players, and so on and so forth. But ever since then, they've really done nothing. They didn't build on that success. They've kind of remained stationary while the rest of the league has improved. This summer, they went and got DeMar DeRozan, who, as good as DeMar DeRozan is as a player, I don't necessarily know if that was the right player to target in terms of style and fit with the team. And then I just saw just now that apparently Mike Brown asked DeMar DeRozan if he would be comfortable with coming off the bench. And, when players in your locker room aren't happy, especially the big name player you went and got this summer, it can lead to a coach being forced to move on. But what are your thoughts about the Sacramento situation and the direction that they're trending in?
When you're not in the building, you don't. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage of being not being privy to conversations that have gone on, what relationships started to fracture, whether it's between coaches and front office, coaches and players, whatever the case may be. However, outside looking in, I think Mike Brown did a terrific coaching job for the most part in Sacramento. I mean, he made this team relevant. First time they got to the playoffs a couple years ago. And when you do that, what he did, then expectations begin to take over, especially in a place like Sacramento that hadn't won a lot lately, or really in the last 15, 16 years prior to that. So Mike was a little bit of a victim of his own success. People expected him. I believe that first year they finished third in the Western Conference. So now your fan base, people around the organization expect, okay, because they had a relatively young team, we're going to be here. We're going to be in this mix. And when that doesn't happen and you start to regress, unfortunately, a lot of times in this league and in professional sports, whether it's the NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball, you name it, hockey, the coach often is the first to take the blow, if you will, and that position is changed out more often than any other position because it takes a longer time to.
Especially for coaches that see success. Because if you look at the Coach of the Year winners, right? Mike
Yes.
Brown won Coach of the Year in 2023. He's now been fired. Monty Williams won Coach of the Year in 2022. He's now been fired. Nick Nurse won Coach of the Year in 2020. Fired. Mike Budenholzer 2019. Fired. Dwayne Casey 2018. Fired. Mike D'Antoni 2017. Fired. With the exception of Tom Thibodeau in New York, Mark Dadnott, who only just won it this year with OKC. With the exception of Tom Thibodeau, Steve Kerr, and Greg Popovich, if you win Coach of the Year, you're going to get fired within the next 3 years after that.
Yeah, and then that's when you got to start looking at it. All those you mentioned. What did the rosters look like? How much did the rosters change and improve? As I look at this current Sacramento team, look, I was there when we drafted De'Aaron Fox. I'm a huge De'Aaron Fox guy. I think he's a tremendous talent in this league. But as I look at the rest of the group, and I like Domantas Sabonis, I think he's a very solid pro. He shows up each and every night. But overall, I don't think they're a deep team. I don't think they're a tough team. So when it gets down to and as I listen to some of Mike Brown's press conferences and some of his statements, he, I believe, understood that this team needed to get tougher, needed to learn how to grind out situations on the defensive end. And that's where he was trying to get this team to. And I believe he at least had the Sacramento Kings team in the top 15 defensive efficiency, I believe. From a numbers standpoint, it bore out. But I just, as I watch them overall, I don't see the edge from a group that's required to take that next step and be a constant playoff presence. Because you hear BJ and I talk about this all the time. If you can't defend and you don't have toughness on a consistent basis, it's hard to beat the good teams in this league, especially when you talk about, when you get into the playoff series.
And now you hear the whispers of De'Aaron Fox maybe wanting to be out of there. I know BJ's going to tell us that Sabonis needs to play at the 4, and they need to get a 5.
Scott said it beautifully. If we're not in the building, we really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, more recent than I have, he's just recently was in the building. So he understands the complexity of what's going on behind the scenes. We're just here observing, making a comment, just talking. So first, here at the Hoop Genius podcast, we don't like to see anyone lose their job. Okay. First of all, we want to have that level of awareness. We like to talk about the game. We like to talk about the beautiful things, this game and the life lessons and all that, so forth and so on. However, this is another part of the business of sports that when we sign up, this is part of it. And now we have another example. Okay. But this is also a teachable moment for everyone here, because the one thing that is lacking that I know Scott believes in, I know Mo believes in, and certainly I'm going to say this from in all aspects of my life. Now, when you make these tough decisions, right? Scott was just sitting in that hot seat. I've sat over there in that seat. Mo is going to sit in that seat. Well, I need some leadership here to come up and step up to that mic when that mic is hot, and then step up there and say, okay, this is a tough business. We want to respect everything that, Coach Brown has done here. However, they've decided to go in a different direction. That's their business. I expect the leadership to step up to the microphone and lead. Okay. We keep talking about these things, and every year I chuckle to myself. Talk about culture. We talk about we're family. We talk about.
Do you want to hear?
No,
Here's-
I don't know. Hold
no,
on, and then I'm
no,
gonna
no.
let you have it. I'm gonna let you have it. I just expect the leadership to step up to the plate now, lead. Whatever decision was made, whether I agree with it or not, you said it, why, and you gave us the direction and where we're going moving forward from here. Now, unless my news is not coming here in LA, I haven't heard anything.
This is what I'm going to say. Do you want to see the headline?
That's all I expected.
The headline is Kings GM Monty McNair breaks silence on Mike Brown firing. And then you read the article, and here is the groundbreaking silence that was broken. This was a difficult decision, and I want to thank Mike for his many contributions to the organization.
Okay.
That's it.
So all I'm saying
says.
is, all I'm saying here is a gentleman right here we're looking at here right now, you're listening to right now, that has all of the leadership qualities to sit in that seat, has sat in that seat, has won championships in that seat, and now we're sitting here, what is it, December 30th, and we haven't heard anything.
And this is the 8th coach in the last 12 years for the
So
Sacramento Kings.
So clearly there's something going on here, but we're not behind the scenes. And I want to respect the job, because I'm not trying to go off on any other than to say there is a level that we, as the fans of the game, as people who have participated in the game, to say, at the very least, in these very difficult situations, right? We expect the players are expected, no matter what, to come to that microphone. And now we've heard nothing. And this, to me, is Mike Brown deserves better. The players deserve better. And I don't work for Sacramento, but the Kings, life goes on, right? We're all big boys here. It's like Scott, I'm sure, has had to make this call. I'm not sure. I know he's had to make this call. When you make a trade, you want to call that player before it gets on Twitter or before it gets in the media. So here is another situation for all executives that works in sports. If you're going to be in this business, there's a level of leadership that is required to do the job. I know we keep talking about analytics and all those things, but that's the one aspect and the one element that will never change: leadership and the people that work in it.
Let me add this, because you touched on this earlier when you said what we all signed up for when you get into this business. Well, as a front office executive and as a GM or president of a team, this is one of the things you sign up for. You don't just sign up for, hey, we won the championship, hey, we won the trade, hey, everything's going great. You also signed up for these difficult moments when you feel like you have to make a coaching change, or you had to trade a player or suspend a player, whatever the case may be, that may be deemed a negative out in your local public and national public, but that's what you signed up for. So you have to come out. I've always believed in that you come out equally the same in terms of when things are going well and when things aren't going well. You got to hold yourself accountable. Your team is looking for you to do that. And you owe that to your team, you owe that to your community. You also owe that to the person that if you're moving on from a job. Because again, Mike Brown really was an important part of making this team relevant the last couple of seasons.
You have an organization, right? You have your ownership, you have your front office, you have your coach, you have your players. At some point, there has to be a cohesion and synergy between all the moving parts here, because team sources insisted the decision to fire Brown was Monty McNair, the general manager. The organization is choosing to back the front office of McNair and Wilcox, who are still considered safe amongst all the Kings' struggles. The roster depth has eroded the last 2 seasons, forcing Brown to search a rotation that hasn't had the answers. It's a weakness the front office acknowledges and is still attempting to remedy by the trade deadline. Okay, I don't understand if Mike Brown comes in, brings your franchise back to relevancy, plays great basketball, and then, as the article states, the depth is eroded of this team. Exactly. The decision-making is questionable. The draft picks, okay, you've got Fox and you've got Halliburton on your roster, so you go and draft Davion Mitchell. Like, I don't understand where the logic... Davion Mitchell, a great defender, but as you can see, there's not enough minutes for him to develop into the player that he could be. You clearly needed front court help. Why didn't you draft someone in the front court and make a move with that pick? You then, this summer, you go and get DeMar DeRozan. Great. Sounds great on paper. Sounds great on NBA 2K. But in reality, Keegan Murray, who one of your former... what number pick in the draft? Keegan Murray was the number 4 pick in the draft.
Number 4 pick in the draft.
Yeah. He's now having the worst season of his career. He's only played 2 seasons before. He's having the worst season of his career. I'm not saying it's DeMar DeRozan's fault, but I'm just saying, what was the need for that move? Because you've already got Sabonis, who likes to be in the mid-range area. You've already got De'Aaron Fox, who's going to be your primary ball handler, and the ball's going to be in his hands for most of the possessions. And then you've got Keegan Murray, who's really coming into his own. The money that you're paying DeMar DeRozan could have been utilized elsewhere on the roster, so on and so forth. So for me, it's like, I know Mike Brown didn't do a good job coaching this season, but that doesn't make him a bad coach. He's using the tools that I've been able to give him and trying to make things work and make things mesh that I don't necessarily think are designed to mesh, if you see what I'm saying. Like, there's only so much you can do with the players that are on your team. And at the end of the day, Mike Brown's not the one out there on the court missing defensive coverages. Mike Brown's not the one out there on the court fouling 3-point shooters in a 2-point game. So it is a little crazy to me that the article states ownership is trying to stick with the front office. Because in my opinion, the front office is not, and I know, Scott, these are the guys that you know and you've worked with, and I'm not being rude.
Yeah, I don't know money. Yeah, no,
I'm just saying the facts of the situation.
Yeah, no.
They've not done a good job. And that's it. Like, trading for Sabonis was a good move. Well done. Drafting Keegan Murray was a good move. Well done. But outside of those 2 moves, can anyone tell me a good decision that these guys have made?
Yeah, well, that statement, to me, there's notice being served there too, because they're saying, hey, the roster's not good enough. Now we let go of the coach.
You've gotten to the trade deadline.
Yeah. We let go of the coach now, but the roster's not good enough. That's what that statement essentially said, right?
Yeah.
So now the front office has a short window to, I guess, get the roster right. But now, again, it gets back to leadership. Now you have an interim coach, great guy, Doug Christie, but he's a neophyte to coaching, really. Now, he's not a neophyte to NBA basketball. I think he does a terrific job communicating with people, because, I work with Doug a little bit, but I don't know him as a coach. Doug was he was doing television when I was out there in Sacramento. So he's got a learning curve that he's going to be going through now when you've got all this pressure to win games. And look, what did they get knocked out in the play-in last year?
They beat Golden State in the first play-in.
Right. And now they're not even in the play-in rankings. I believe they're 12th in the Western Conference. And that's going to be hard to move up those 2 spots to even get it back into the play-in. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, the rest of the season here in Sacramento. But,
Shout out to Mike Brown.
yeah, no, Mike, look,
Brown.
Mike Brown has nothing to be ashamed of, or what. That guy went out there and did something that nobody had done. You mentioned like 8 coaches in the last 12 years, but Mike Brown led that team to the playoffs. Third seed in the Western Conference. Hey, kudos to him and the job that got them to at least have the expectations that are there now that ended up leading to his own demise. So, yeah.
When you looking at putting together a team, and Mo, this is for you, Mo, more than anyone else. When you are faced in that draft room, whether the player that you have identified for your current roster, okay, is there or not there on the board. Let's say he's not there on the board. Then, Mo, that's where the experience of the executive that has to draft someone, because as Scott knows, you got to draft someone.
Yes, yeah, right. You can't yell pass.
Well,
I mean, technically you can say pass, you lose and fall down the draft,
Okay.
but you don't want to do that.
I'm going to give this to Mo because Mo, you're going to sit in that seat. Okay. When Scott and I probably first got in the draft room, we started looking at what we needed for our team. And then we quickly realized that team that you see today, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, is not the team that you're going to have tomorrow, because you're always looking to improve your team.
Yes.
And then at some point, the more experience and the better executives all say the same thing. Regardless of position, you should draft the best player. Now, I would argue that Halliburton was an excellent pick.
Yes.
And the reason being because he brought back to you Sabonis.
Yes.
Okay. I would also argue that Devion Mitchell was a good pick, regardless of position. Why? Because we know that he is a rotational player, and Scott knows, and you hear him say it often, depth matters in this league. Regardless if you have an all-star player at that position or not, you always want to be, at the very least, if you're going to be a good team.
They picked him 9th, and he wasn't, I don't think he was on anyone's board as a top 10 player in that draft. They reached up to get him.
I don't know about that, Mo.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, Mo.
I can see at least 3 or 4 players I would have
They
picked
went to the
ahead of him.
final.
No, yeah, right. But he was I recall this correctly. I mean, he was a hot name in that draft.
They won the championship that year, right, Scott? In
Baylor?
college. Yeah, didn't Baylor win the national title that year?
Yes,
At least they won
I believe. I believe yes, they did.
But I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the draft. Like, there's 3 or 4 guys I would have picked ahead of him.
Who did he go ahead of in that draft, Mo?
Who do you go ahead
That's
of?
my memory.
Moses
But I know he was a surefire lottery pick.
Yes,
going into the draft.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew that.
Moses Moody, Alperen Şengün, Trey Murphy, Trey Mann, Jalen Johnson. So, like, there's a bunch of guys that went after him that maybe would have addressed the need for that team a little bit better than another guard who's only going to get 5 to 10 minutes a game. Which depth is important, but you're using a lottery pick on a depth piece who's not going to be able to.
And I would say this
the way that they should.
And again, I was not there in the room in Sacramento, but my guess would be, an educated guess would be, how they settled in on Davion Mitchell. Obviously they liked the player and liked his talent, even though they had a couple guards. But the intangible that he brought, the toughness, the defense, was lacking on their roster. Still is today. And I believe that ingredient probably took them over the hump to say, let's draft him because we need some toughness in the building. And look, when you look at some of the great teams in years go by, and I'm going to go back to our Detroit Pistons that we grew up with, BJ, and the team that you competed against, those bad boy teams, the 3-guard rotation that they had.
You must.
That's what it was. It was. When you talk about Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and Vinnie Johnson. So you looked at the time. You got
look at Mo's Celtics right now. Look at Mo's Celtics right now.
Yeah.
So you have to have
Hey, see, you know how I just noticed that was beautiful what you did there with Mo, because
yeah.
Mo just all of a sudden changed his whole idea when you
You
brought the
got it.
Celtics example in there. Then
You
exactly.
have to, you have to have these players. And, I would argue what the Kings, the identification of Malik Monk, he's thrived there,
Yes.
especially when he was coming off
Yes.
the bench. I would also argue that was a good pickup for them with the Murray kid from the University of Iowa. Good. Kevin Herter, another nice player that is. So they've done some positive things out there. They didn't win by accident. However, as we all know, it is really, really hard to go from mediocrity to the elite category, especially in this Western Conference as it is.
Yes.
That's really hard to do. Now that is debatable with this team, because when they lost to the Golden State Warriors, I believe, in the first round,
First round,
It was
yeah.
7 games. It was 7 games.
seven-game
too, right?
series,
Steph Curry.
very, very entertaining. I mean, it was an entertaining series. However, I thought for that team, for that group, they needed to win that series.
No question.
Now, to me, that's what this all comes down to, because that set the bar, because they had a terrific regular season. They had the home court advantage, and then they couldn't get it done, even though it could have went either way.
Yeah,
I mean,
game
Steph
7
Curry,
at home.
Steph Curry had what, a 50, he had a 50, whatever. I mean, however, that to me is what this is really all about. We've seen this team lose now since then, and exactly what Scott said. They're not losing because of a lack of talent. They're losing because of toughness.
With Davion Mitchell, they traded him for Jalen McDaniels in order to get under the luxury tax. So
Whatever the case
they
may
drafted
be.
him because they valued his toughness. They were happy to ship him out for salary. So I don't understand how you're going to draft a lottery pick and you want to add to your culture and identity, and then you're going to ship him out for Jalen McDaniels. Respectfully,
That's the people who are in the building. We're just saying what we can see and what we know. They made a decision. Now, when you look at this team, it is a glaring. If you look at this team, there's a glaring weakness with the team. Any team that comes in and plays a physical brand of basketball,
No question.
they can't play that brand. Okay, so for whatever the reason, you can make the changes. You can blame the coach. You can blame this. The responsibility are the players who are in between those lines, and they're going to have to play a brand of basketball that's going to resemble winning basketball. And you got to play with a certain level of physicality if you're going to win at this level. Okay? They've made a commitment to playing fast. I believe they were one of, if not the fastest playing team in the league, right? They've always been that way. And so far, that has been countered by just getting physical with them. They're actually a little team with Sabonis at the center, Murray, DeMar DeRozan at the 3 and the 4, Malik Monk and Fox. They're a little team. I don't know where they stand as far as block shots and all those things, but they are small. And then you're talking about having to play against Jokic. Now I know he's out. Chet Holmgren and these guys, they're big. They're tall. Then you look at the Dallas Mavericks. They went out and got Gafford and those guys. Now they're 7-footers and jumping. So they have a glaring weakness.
Memphis Grizzlies have big
Memphis
Zach Edey.
Zach
Edey.
and Jaren Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah,
So
yes.
the Houston Rockets are big. Okay.
Yeah, he has Mo's guy.
Sengun
They should have
and
just
Steven
drafted him.
Adams. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
can sit here and blame whoever we want to blame. But when you look around, which Scott knows now, when you are constructing your team, you better know what the competition is doing. And they are little when you start looking around the rest of the world. Jokic, all of these guys. So I think they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, look to see what they have to do. And Mo said, okay, I said Sabonis. Do I think Sabonis can play the 5? Yes, especially in today's game. However, if you're going to compete against these elite teams, right? let's go back to Mo's team. Mo has a big team. You got Porzingis and you got Al Horford. Okay, that's good size. You got Jason Tatum. They say he's 6'8". Jason Tatum's every bit 6'9".
Tall as
So
hell. Yeah.
he's tall. You got nice size in the guards for your guards.
No question.
Okay.
No question.
So you start looking at these teams, you say, oh, size does matter. Okay. You last year you had Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert.
Right.
This is not an accident now. So we can sit here and keep talking about and blaming somebody, but I just named, this is just off the top. I haven't done any
Cavs,
research.
Bucks.
It just, okay. So now we know why those teams are winning. You know, the Bucks just won it, 2 or 3 years ago, right? They just won the championship whenever they won it with Brook Lopez and Giannis. So we're starting to catch the trend. For whatever reason, when you have these small balls, you can win in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, it's a different matter. And that's why, I'm looking at this going, okay, I don't understand. And I know Mike Brown has to know this, right? He knows it. Hey, everybody knows it. This isn't anything new, but when we see these decisions, I'm willing to learn, but I just haven't seen it work yet.
See, and what you're getting at the core here, and look, when you're building a team, first and foremost, you better have an identity in mind of who you're going to be each and every day. And that's what Sacramento right now. What if I said to you, what is the identity of that team?
Dribble handoffs.
Could you say?
It's
that?
a bonus dribble.
Well, I
handoff.
mean, no, right. But I'm just saying. But no, what I'm saying. Look, if I go to you and say Miami Heat, what's their identity? We know it's toughness, it's defense. I don't care. The names and faces may change, but in terms of organizationally and how they want to play basketball, it's been pretty much the same since I've been involved with the NBA. And that is what when you're building and putting together a team, that is so important. So that helps you not only pick and choose your team and define your team in the short term, but also in the long term. And you got to stay consistent to that. You can't bounce around. And BJ makes a valid point. Look, in my opinion, even though I've watched teams win with small ball and regular season, all like that, no, I'm always focused on, okay, who's winning in the playoffs and who's hosting that trophy at the end of the season, the Larry O'Brien at the end of the season. And all those teams have some sort of size link.
Even the Warriors had
their
Andrew
roster.
Bogut.
To their roster. When they were winning their first ones, they went out. They felt they got a guy like Andrew Bogut. They had
Festus Pachulia to be a star.
They had
And
Pachulia.
22, we were sat here talking about Kevon Looney's rebounding for like every single show.
They had Festus Ezeli contributed to those groups. You gotta have some size. Yeah, you gotta have some. And look, size somewhere on the court is gonna match up. Look, their backcourt. I mean, Steph as a point guard, okay, average 6'3", whatever. But Klay Thompson was 6'6".
Yeah, 6'6",
6'7" was that, And Draymond was one of those anomaly type players.
And even with Draymond,
undersized guys,
he's got long arms.
But he played big, but he's got very long arms. And he was a little bit of an anomaly, kind of like, Dennis Rodman, who was undersized but could guard guys much taller than him, and Ben Wallace, those type of guys. But you have to be able to match up compete with size in this game, in the 7-game series, because there's going to be a lot of missed shots, and there's going to be a lot of people trying to drive that lane. So you got to protect that rim, and then you got to limit people to one shot when you're trying to win yourself a championship. And so right now, I don't see Sacramento. I don't know their numbers, but as I look at their roster, I know no guard is afraid to go to the lane and go to that rim right now in the league, because there's really nobody there to shut them off, to stop them. And you feel pretty good that you can get offensive rebounds against that group too.
Yep, they're in the bottom half of the league in terms of the amount of rebounds they get per game. It's tough. It's tough for Sacramento. because their fan base got so much hope in that 1 year where they were super successful, and then it's just kind of stagnated from there on out. But maybe they can find a way to turn it around. I don't know. I don't know
I
what
hope
moves
so
their
for
front
'em.
office is going to make by the trade deadline, but we'll see.
I'm pulling for 'em. Hopefully they get it figured out. But time is ticking now.
We'll see.
We're,
We'll see.
hey, 2025 is upon us.
No,
So.
I don't know. Maybe Monty Minette can see something I don't, but time will tell. Time will tell. Time will tell. We'll be back tomorrow with a farewell to 2024 episode. Scott, appreciate you joining us. BJ, as
Yes.
always. Appreciate you guys listening. I hope you guys listening had a great holiday season, and we'll be back soon. So make sure you subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. And until next time, unlike the Sacramento Kings, get buckets.